Growing up, my sister Stephanie and I were inseparable. We shared everything from secrets to clothes, dreaming about our futures together. She was 2 years older, always my protector and my closest friend. We would spend hours talking about the kind of lives we wanted, the people we would marry, and how we would always be there for each other. But I never imagined that success and money would come between us the way they did. What happened at her engagement party opened my eyes to a side of my sister I had never seen before. Before I continue with this story, could you let me know where you are watching from? Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more real-life stories about family relationships and the lessons they teach us. And now, let me take you through the evening that changed everything I thought I knew about my sister and showed me what really matters in life. Let me start by painting you a picture of our family. We grew up in a middle-class household in suburban Ohio. Dad worked as an accountant for a small firm, and Mom was a receptionist at the local dentist office. Nothing fancy, but we had everything we needed. Our parents taught us the value of hard work, kindness, and staying grounded. They always said that character mattered more than cash, and family came first, no matter what. Stephanie, however, always had bigger dreams. Even as a teenager, she would watch reality shows about wealthy socialites and flip through magazines featuring celebrity mansions. She would talk about wanting designer handbags, expensive cars, and a lifestyle that seemed worlds away from our simple reality. I remember her saying, "Someday, I am going to live like that. I am going to have everything I want." At the time, I thought it was just teenage dreaming. We all have fantasies about living differently, right? Meanwhile, I found contentment in smaller things. I loved reading, volunteering at the animal shelter, and helping younger kids with their homework. When I decided to become an elementary school teacher, Stephanie rolled her eyes and said, "Mel, you could do so much more with your life." But teaching felt like my calling. There was something magical about seeing a child understand a difficult concept for the first time, about being the person who made them feel safe and valued. I met David during our junior year at Ohio State University. He was studying computer science, and I was working on my education degree. We met in the library during finals week. I was stressed about a particularly difficult education theory exam, and he offered to help me organize my study materials. David had this gentle way about him, patient and thoughtful. He never tried to impress me with grand gestures or expensive dates. Instead, he would bring me coffee during late study sessions and listen to me talk about my dreams of making a difference in kids' lives. We dated for 6 years before getting married, and every moment felt natural and right. David landed a job as a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company in Columbus after graduation. He was incredibly talented with coding and problem solving, but he never bragged about his work or acted like he was better than anyone else. He preferred quiet nights at home to expensive restaurants, and he treated everyone with the same level of respect, whether they were the CEO or the janitor. Our wedding was small and beautiful, held in the same church where our parents had gotten married. Stephanie was my maid of honor, and she seemed genuinely happy for us, even though she made a few comments about how we could have afforded a bigger venue if David had been more ambitious. At the time, I brushed off her remarks as harmless sister teasing. 8 months before the engagement party, everything began to change. Stephanie met Alexander at a corporate networking event in Cleveland. She had been working as a marketing coordinator for a regional company, and she was attending the event to make professional connections. Alexander was the guest speaker that evening, and according to Stephanie, she was mesmerized from the moment he started talking. Alexander Richardson was 34 years old and the CEO of a rapidly growing tech startup called Innovate Now. His company specialized in artificial intelligence solutions for healthcare systems, and they had just secured a major round of funding from venture capitalists. He drove a Tesla Model S, owned a penthouse apartment in downtown Cleveland, and wore suits that probably cost more than my monthly salary. After that first meeting, Stephanie became completely obsessed. She started following him on every social media platform, liking his posts within minutes of them being published. She would call me for hours, analyzing every text message he sent her, every dinner invitation, every gift he gave her. Within 3 months, they were officially dating, and within 6 months, she had practically moved into his penthouse. The transformation in my sister was dramatic and painful to watch. She stopped shopping at Target and started frequenting boutiques in the upscale part of town. Her wardrobe shifted from practical work clothes to designer pieces that she could barely afford on her salary. She started getting expensive highlights at a high-end salon and began talking differently, using phrases like networking opportunities and luxury lifestyle in casual conversation. More troubling was how she began treating our family. She stopped coming to our regular Sunday dinners, claiming she was too busy with important social commitments. When she did visit, she would spend the entire time on her phone texting Alexander or scrolling through social media posts from his wealthy friends. She started making subtle comments about our parents' modest home, suggesting they should invest in some updates or consider moving somewhere more sophisticated. During one particularly hurtful conversation, she told me that I should encourage David to be more ambitious. "Melanie, you guys could have so much more if David just tried harder. He is smart enough. Why does not he start his own company, or at least try to get promoted? Do you not want nice things?" Her words stung because they implied that our happiness was somehow insufficient, that our simple life was something to be ashamed of. The engagement announcement came on a Tuesday evening in March. Stephanie called me while I was grading papers at our kitchen table, and her voice had an unusual coldness to it. "I wanted you to hear this from me first," she said without any of her usual warmth. "Alexander proposed last weekend. We are engaged." I should have felt pure joy for my sister, but something in her tone made me hesitate. "That is wonderful, Stephanie. I am so happy for you. Tell me everything. How did he propose?" She described an elaborate proposal at an exclusive restaurant overlooking Lake Erie, complete with a string quartet and a 5-carat diamond ring. As she talked, I could hear the excitement in her voice, but it was mixed with something else. Pride, maybe. Or perhaps a sense of superiority that made me uncomfortable. "We are planning the engagement party for next month," she continued. "It will be at the Ritz-Carlton downtown. Very formal. Make sure David has a nice suit. The guest list includes some very important people from Alexander's business circle." When I asked about helping with the preparations, something we had always done for each other's major life events, she quickly shut me down. "Thanks, but I have already hired a professional event planner. This needs to be perfect, you understand. Alexander's reputation is on the line." That conversation left me with a strange feeling in my stomach, like something fundamental had shifted between us. Over the next few weeks, I tried calling Stephanie several times to chat about the party details, to offer assistance, or just to connect like we used to. But each conversation felt strained and formal, as if she was talking to an acquaintance rather than her sister. 2 weeks before the party, I finally understood that something was seriously wrong. I had stopped by her apartment to drop off a gift I had found for her, a photo album filled with pictures of our childhood together. When I arrived, she seemed annoyed by my unexpected visit and barely invited me inside. As we talked, she kept checking her phone and giving short answers to my questions. When I mentioned how excited David and I were about the party, she gave me a look I had never seen before, a mixture of pity and embarrassment that made my blood run cold. The evening of the engagement party arrived with all the fanfare Stephanie had promised. David and I drove to the Ritz-Carlton in our 7-year-old Honda Civic, feeling both excited and nervous about the elegant evening ahead. I had bought a new black dress from Nordstrom Rack, and David wore his best suit, the one he had purchased for our wedding 2 years earlier. We felt dressed up and ready to celebrate my sister's happiness. Walking into the hotel lobby was like entering a different world. Crystal chandeliers cast elegant light across marble floors, and perfectly dressed staff members glided silently through the space, attending to every detail. The sound of classical music drifted from the ballroom, and we could see guests through the open doors, all looking like they had stepped out of a fashion magazine. The engagement party was being held in the hotel's grand ballroom, and the transformation was breathtaking. White roses and baby's breath covered every surface with gold accents, catching the light from hundreds of candles placed throughout the room. The ceiling was draped with flowing white fabric that created an almost ethereal atmosphere. Round tables were set with fine china and crystal glasses that sparkled under the soft lighting. As we entered the ballroom, I immediately spotted Stephanie near the front of the room. She looked absolutely stunning in a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than our monthly rent. Her hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and the diamond engagement ring on her finger caught the light every time she gestured. She was talking animatedly with a group of well-dressed guests, laughing and looking completely at home in this sophisticated setting. Alexander stood beside her, tall and confident, in an expensive-looking tuxedo. Even from across the room, he had an undeniable presence, the kind of natural charisma that draws people in. He was clearly in his element, moving smoothly between conversations and making everyone around him feel important and valued. The guest list was exactly what Stephanie had described. These were clearly successful, wealthy people who belonged in this kind of setting. The women wore designer gowns and statement jewelry, while the men sported custom suits and expensive watches. Their conversations buzzed with talk of vacation homes in the Hamptons, recent trips to Europe, and business deals worth millions of dollars. David and I approached the check-in table, where a young woman with a clipboard smiled politely and asked for our names. After scanning her list, she looked up with a slightly confused expression. "Oh, yes, here you are. You will be at table 18. One of our staff members will show you to your seats." A uniformed server appeared immediately and gestured for us to follow him. As we walked through the ballroom, I expected to be led toward the front, where I could see our parents and some of Stephanie's longtime friends sitting at beautifully decorated tables near the small stage where the happy couple would presumably make their speeches. Instead, the server led us toward the very back of the ballroom, past most of the other guests, to a corner area that felt completely separate from the main celebration. Table 18 was positioned behind a large, decorative arrangement of plants and flowers that effectively blocked our view of most of the room, including the stage area where Stephanie and Alexander would be speaking. Looking around our assigned area, I realized that we were sitting with people I did not recognize. The other guests at nearby tables seemed equally confused about their placement, and many of them appeared to be checking their phones or looking around uncomfortably. It became clear that this was where the less important guests had been placed, the people who were invited but not considered significant enough to be part of the main celebration. David reached for my hand under the table, and I could see the concern in his eyes. "Maybe there was a mistake with the seating chart," he said quietly, always trying to give people the benefit of the doubt. But deep down, I knew this was not a mistake. This was intentional. As the evening progressed, the separation became even more obvious. When servers brought out appetizers, the front tables were served first with what appeared to be elaborate canapes and premium champagne. By the time the servers reached our area, the appetizers were simpler, and the champagne had been replaced with a basic sparkling wine. From our secluded corner, I watched my sister move gracefully through the main section of the party, greeting guests and accepting congratulations. She spent considerable time at each of the front tables, laughing and chatting with Alexander's business associates and their spouses. I noticed that she had not even glanced in our direction since we had arrived, despite the fact that we were supposed to be among her closest family members. The most painful moment came during the cocktail hour when I decided to approach Stephanie to offer my congratulations in person. As I made my way through the crowd toward the front of the room, I overheard her talking to a woman in an expensive-looking gown. Of course, we had to be very selective about the seating arrangements, Stephanie was saying. Alexander has so many important business connections here tonight. We needed to make sure the networking opportunities were maximized for the people who really matter. The woman nodded knowingly. Absolutely. You cannot have just anyone sitting at the premium tables. It sends the wrong message about your social circle. Stephanie laughed a sound that did not match the warm, genuine laughter I remembered from our childhood. Exactly. I had to put some people in the back section to keep the VIP area focused and professional. You understand how it is. You cannot let family obligations interfere with the important social dynamics of an event like this. Hearing my sister refer to her own family as family obligations felt like being punched in the stomach. I stood there for a moment, trying to process what I had just heard, hoping that somehow I had misunderstood. But her meaning was crystal clear. We had been deliberately placed in the back because she was embarrassed by us, because we did not fit the image she was trying to project to Alexander's wealthy friends. I turned around and walked back to our table, my cheeks burning with humiliation and my heart breaking with the realization that my sister valued her new social status more than her relationship with her own family. David took one look at my face and knew immediately that something terrible had happened. "What is wrong?" he asked, his voice full of concern. I told him what I had overheard, watching his expression shift from confusion to hurt to anger. David had always been patient and understanding, but hearing that we had been intentionally marginalized because of our economic status clearly struck a nerve. "Maybe we should just leave," he said quietly. "We do not have to stay here and be treated like this." But I was not ready to give up on my sister yet. Despite everything, I still held onto the hope that this was all some terrible misunderstanding, that the Stephanie I had grown up with was still in there somewhere beneath all the new pretensions and social climbing. As the evening progressed, the divide between the VIP section and our relegated area became increasingly apparent. The main tables enjoyed a multi-course dinner with what appeared to be filet mignon and lobster, while our section received chicken and vegetables that had clearly been prepared in a completely different kitchen. The wine selection at the front tables included expensive bottles that the servers presented with ceremony, while we received generic red and white wine poured from unmarked carafes. But the food and drinks were not what hurt the most. It was watching my sister completely ignore our existence while she played the perfect hostess to Alexander's friends and business associates. She moved from table to table at the front of the room, spending time with each group, laughing at their jokes and accepting their compliments on the beautiful party. She posed for photos with Alexander's colleagues and their wives, always making sure she was positioned to show off her enormous engagement ring. Meanwhile, she had not acknowledged our presence once since we had arrived. It was as if David and I, along with our parents, had become invisible the moment we walked into that ballroom. Our parents, who had sacrificed so much to give Stephanie every opportunity in life, were sitting at a table just as far back as ours, looking confused and hurt by their daughter's behavior. About an hour into the dinner service, I decided to make one more attempt at connecting with my sister. I waited until she was between conversations, then approached her near the front of the room. When she saw me coming, her expression shifted to one of barely concealed annoyance. "Stephanie," I said, trying to keep my voice warm and loving despite my hurt feelings, "the party is absolutely beautiful. You have done such an amazing job with everything." "Thank you," she replied curtly, glancing around as if looking for an escape route. "I was hoping we could have a few minutes to talk," I continued. "It feels like it has been forever since we have had a real conversation." Her response was cold and dismissive. "Melanie, I am really busy right now. This is not the time for a family chat. I have important guests to attend to." The word important hung in the air between us like a slap. The implication was clear. I was not important. My husband was not important. Our parents were not important. Only the wealthy, successful people in the front section of the room mattered to her now. "I understand you are busy," I said, trying to maintain my composure. "But we are family, Stephanie. We love you, and we are here to celebrate with you. Why are we sitting so far away from everything? Why does it feel like you are ashamed of us?" For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Maybe it was guilt, or perhaps a flash of the sister I used to know, but it disappeared quickly, replaced by a defensive coldness that I had never seen before. "You do not understand the position I am in," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "Alexander has clients and investors here tonight. These people are worth millions of dollars, Melanie. They are used to a certain level of sophistication, a certain social class. I cannot have them thinking that my family is not on their level." I stared at her, hardly believing what I was hearing. "What exactly are you saying, Stephanie?" She looked around nervously, then leaned closer and lowered her voice. "I am saying that David is just a regular software engineer at some no-name company, and you are an elementary school teacher. That is fine for you, but it is not the image I need to project tonight. These people expect me to come from a certain background, to have family members who understand their world." The words hit me like a physical blow. My own sister, the person I had shared my deepest secrets with, who had been my maid of honor just 2 years earlier, was telling me that she was ashamed of who we were. She was ashamed of David's honest work, ashamed of my dedication to teaching children, ashamed of our modest lifestyle that we had never hidden from anyone. "So, you hid us in the back of the room, like we are some kind of embarrassment," I said, my voice shaking with hurt and anger. "I did not hide you," she protested, but her tone lacked conviction. "I just had to be strategic about the seating arrangements. You would not understand. You have never had to think about these kinds of social dynamics." Before I could respond, I heard a man's voice behind me, saying David's name. We both turned to see Alexander approaching our conversation with a huge smile on his face, clearly excited about something. "David!" Alexander called out as he reached us. "What are you doing here? This is incredible." Stephanie's face went completely pale. She looked back and forth between Alexander and me with an expression of growing panic, clearly not understanding why her fiance knew my husband's name, let alone why he seemed so happy to see him. "Hey, Alexander," David replied, standing up from our distant table to join the conversation. "Congratulations on the engagement. Stephanie is my sister-in-law." Alexander's eyes widened with surprise and delight. Are you kidding me, Stephanie? You never told me you were related to David. This is amazing. Stephanie's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to speak, but no words came out. She was clearly struggling to process this unexpected connection. And from the look on her face, she was beginning to realize that she might have made a terrible mistake. You two know each other? She finally managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander laughed and clapped David on the shoulder. Know each other, Stephanie. David saved my company. Remember when I told you about that major technical crisis we had last year when our entire system crashed right before the big investor presentation? David was the consultant we brought in to fix everything. I watched my sister's face grow even paler as Alexander continued his enthusiastic explanation. David worked for 72 hours straight to rebuild our core architecture. Alexander said, his voice filled with admiration and gratitude. If it were not for him, Innovate Now would have lost our funding and probably gone out of business. He is one of the most brilliant software architects I have ever worked with. Stephanie looked like she might faint. All evening, she had been treating us like second-class citizens, relegating us to the back of the room because she was embarrassed by David's ordinary job as a software engineer. Now, she was discovering that her fiance considered my husband to be the hero who had saved his entire company. But that is not even the best part, Alexander continued, completely oblivious to Stephanie's growing distress. After David fixed our system and helped us prepare for the investor meeting, I offered him the position of Chief Technology Officer. Do you know what he said? He turned it down. Can you believe that? David, ever humble, tried to downplay the situation. The money was good, but I am happy where I am. I like my current team, and the work-life balance is important to me and Melanie. Alexander shook his head in amazement. He turned down a salary that would have made him a millionaire within 5 years. Plus, I offered him significant equity in the company. If he had accepted, he would be worth more than most of the people in this room right now. I felt a mixture of pride in my husband and vindication for the way we had been treated all evening. David had never told me the full details of his consulting work with Alexander's company or about the job offer he had declined. He was not the type to brag about his achievements or to measure his worth by his bank account. Stephanie stood there in stunned silence, clearly trying to process the fact that the man she had dismissed as just a regular software engineer was actually someone her fiancé respected and valued above almost anyone else in his professional circle. All of her assumptions about social class and worth were crumbling around her. Stephanie, I said quietly, I think David and I are going to head home now. For the first time all evening, my sister looked directly at me, and I could see genuine fear in her eyes. She was beginning to understand the magnitude of her mistake, not just in how she had treated us, but in what this revelation might mean for her relationship with Alexander. Melanie, wait, she started to say, but I held up my hand to stop her. We came here tonight to celebrate your happiness, I said, keeping my voice calm and dignified. But it is clear that our presence makes you uncomfortable. We will let you get back to your important guests. I turned to Alexander, who was looking increasingly confused by the tension in our conversation. Thank you for recognizing David's value, I said sincerely. It means more than you know. With that, David and I walked away from the woman who used to be my closest friend in the world, leaving her to face the consequences of her choices. The car ride home was silent for the first 10 minutes. David focused on driving while I stared out the passenger window, trying to process everything that had happened. The city lights blurred past us, as we made our way back to our modest neighborhood, back to our simple life, that suddenly felt like the most precious thing in the world. Finally, David pulled into a parking lot and turned off the engine. We sat there in the darkness for a moment before he spoke. "Mel, I am so sorry," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I should have told you about working with Alexander's company. I should have mentioned the job offer." I turned to look at my husband, this good man who had quietly turned down a fortune because he valued our life together more than money or status. "Why did you not tell me?" I asked, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. David ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he made when he was thinking carefully about his words. "Because it did not matter to me," he said simply. "The consulting work was just a job. The offer was flattering, but I knew I did not want it. I love teaching the newer developers at my current company. I love coming home to you at a reasonable hour every day. I love that we can have dinner together and talk about your students and my projects without either of us being stressed or overwhelmed." He reached for my hand. When Alexander offered me that position, all I could think about was how it would change our life. And I did not want our life to change. I want to coach Little League someday. I want us to have time for family dinners and weekend trips to visit your parents. I want us to be present for each other, not constantly chasing the next big deal or trying to impress people who do not really know us. Tears started flowing down my cheeks, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude for having married a man who understood what truly mattered in life. While my sister had been chasing wealth and status symbols, I had been building a life with someone who valued love, family, and genuine happiness above everything else. "Alexander seems surprised that you turned down the offer," I said. David nodded. He could not understand it. In his world, more money always equals more success. But success for me is being married to you. Success is knowing that my work makes a difference without consuming my entire identity. Success is being able to help people without expecting anything in return except the satisfaction of a job well done. We drove the rest of the way home in a different kind of silence, one filled with renewed appreciation for each other and for the life we had built together. When we walked into our small house with its secondhand furniture and walls covered with photos of family and friends, it felt like a sanctuary. Over the next few days, I could not stop thinking about what had happened at the engagement party. I found myself analyzing every conversation, every look, every moment. When Stephanie had made it clear that she valued appearance over substance wealth, over character status, over family love. My parents called the morning after the party, and I could hear the hurt in my mother's voice. "We left early," Mom said. "We felt so out of place, like we did not belong at our own daughter's celebration. Did something happen between you and Stephanie?" I told them everything, including the overheard conversation and the revelation about David's connection to Alexander. My father, who had worked 2 jobs to put both his daughters through college, was quiet for a long time after I finished the story. "I am proud of the woman you have become," he finally said, "and I am proud of the man you married. Character cannot be bought, sweetheart. Remember that." 3 days after the party, Stephanie started calling. I let the first few calls go to voicemail, not because I was trying to punish her, but because I needed time to process my feelings and decide how I wanted to handle the situation. Her messages were apologetic, but defensive, asking me to call her back so she could explain everything. A week after the party, Alexander called David directly. He wanted to understand what had happened at the engagement party because Stephanie had been acting strange ever since that night. David, being the diplomatic person he was, simply said that there had been some family tension, but he did not go into specifics. However, Alexander was perceptive enough to piece together some of the story on his own. I keep thinking about the seating arrangements Alexander told David during that phone call, which I overheard on speaker. When I realized you and Melanie were sitting in the back section, I asked Stephanie about it. Her explanation did not make sense. Why would she put her sister and brother-in-law, especially you, at one of the furthest tables from the main celebration 2 weeks after the party? Stephanie finally showed up at our house unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing on our front porch, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I had seen her since we were children. She had been crying, and she was not wearing any of the expensive new clothes that had become her uniform since dating Alexander. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I invited her inside, and we sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we had done homework together as kids, where she had helped me plan my wedding, where David and I shared our meals and our dreams every day. For a long time, neither of us spoke. "I messed up," she finally whispered. "I messed up so badly, Melanie." I waited for her to continue, not ready to make this easy for her, but not wanting to be cruel either. "I got so caught up in Alexander's world that I forgot who I was," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I needed to become someone different to deserve his love. I thought I needed to distance myself from anything that might make me seem ordinary or average." She looked around our kitchen, taking in the modest surroundings that she had been so quick to dismiss. I convinced myself that this life, the life we grew up in, was something to be ashamed of. I thought I had to hide my family, hide my background, hide everything real about myself. "Why?" I asked, the first word I had spoken since she arrived. "Because I was terrified," she admitted. Terrified that if Alexander saw where I really came from, if he met the real me, he would realize I was not good enough for his world. So I created this fake version of myself, and I tried to hide anything that did not fit the image. She reached across the table toward me, then pulled her hand back. "But the worst part is that I hurt the people I love most in the process. I hurt you, I hurt David, I hurt Mom and Dad. I treated you like you were something to be ashamed of, when you are actually everything I should aspire to be." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You have integrity, Melanie. You know who you are, and you are not afraid to be that person. David turned down a fortune because he values his principles and his relationship with you more than money. You both live your lives according to your values, not according to what other people expect from you." She wiped tears from her eyes. "I have been pretending to be someone else for so long that I forgot what it felt like to be authentic. And when Alexander found out how I had treated you, when he understood what I had done—" "What happened?" I asked. "He told me that he fell in love with the person he thought I was, but that person was apparently a lie. He said he could not marry someone who would treat their own family the way I treated you, someone who cared more about appearances than about the people who love them." I felt a mixture of sadness for my sister and respect for Alexander's principles. "Did he break up with you?" Stephanie shook her head. "No, but he said we need to postpone the wedding until I figure out who I really am and what I really value. He said he wants to marry someone with character, someone he can be proud of, not because of their social status, but because of their integrity." We sat in silence for several minutes, both of us absorbing the weight of what she had shared. Finally, I reached across the table and took her hand. "I forgive you, Stephanie," I said, "but things cannot go back to the way they were just because you are sorry. Trust has to be rebuilt. Respect has to be earned again." She nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. "What can I do? How can I fix this?" "Stop trying to be someone you are not," I said. "Start remembering what Mom and Dad taught us about what really matters. Spend time with people who love you for who you are not, for what you can do for them, or how you make them look. Over the following months, Stephanie began the slow process of rediscovering herself. She moved out of Alexander's penthouse and found a modest apartment closer to our parents. She started coming to family dinners again, not because she had to, but because she wanted to reconnect with the people who had known and loved her long before she had any money or status. She also started volunteering at a literacy program for underprivileged children, working alongside teachers like me to help kids who reminded her of who we used to be. Slowly, I began to see glimpses of the sister I had grown up with, the one who cared about people and who was not afraid to get her hands dirty helping others. Alexander gave her space to grow and change, but he also made it clear that any future they might have together depended on her commitment to becoming a person of substance rather than just appearance. It was a difficult lesson, but one that ultimately made both of them stronger and more genuine. 6 months after the engagement party, Stephanie and Alexander had a small, intimate ceremony in our parents' backyard. This time, the guest list included the people who truly mattered: family members, close friends, and colleagues who valued character over net worth. The decorations were simple but beautiful. The food was homemade, and the atmosphere was filled with genuine love and celebration, rather than pretentious display. During her maid of honor speech, Stephanie looked directly at me and said, "My sister taught me that real wealth is not measured by what you own, but by who loves you and who you choose to love in return." She and David showed me what it means to build a life based on values rather than valuables. As I watched my sister dance with her new husband, surrounded by people who loved them for who they truly were, I realized that sometimes the most painful experiences in life are also the most transformative. The engagement party that had caused so much hurt had ultimately led both of us to a deeper understanding of what really matters. Life had taught me that genuine success is not about impressing strangers at fancy parties. It is about being the kind of person that the people you love can count on respect and be proud of. It is about building relationships based on authenticity rather than image, and about having the courage to value substance over style. That night, as David and I drove home from my sister's real wedding, I felt grateful for every part of our journey, even the painful parts. Sometimes it takes a crisis to remind us who we really are and what we truly value. And sometimes the people we love most have to lose their way before they can find their way back to what really matters. Looking back now, I understand that my sister's behavior at the engagement party was not really about David or me. It was about her own insecurity and her misguided belief that she needed to become someone different to deserve love and acceptance. The woman who had tried to hide her family because she was ashamed of our modest backgrounds had forgotten that love is not earned through status or wealth, but through the daily choice to be kind, honest, and loyal to the people who matter most. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone you loved made you feel ashamed of who you are because of your financial situation or social status? Have you experienced the pain of being judged by people who value appearances more than character? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Please like this video if my story resonated with you, and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and the lessons that shape us. Share this with someone who might need to remember that their worth is not determined by their bank account, but by their character and the love they give and receive. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that the most valuable things in life cannot be bought, they can only be built through authentic relationships and genuine love.